Hello.
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 Oh,
Hi.
hi.
Hello.
Just a moment. I just need to fix this.
Um, okay, Lizette has to fix something. We'll get started now.
All right.
Okay, we got the recording going.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Have we gone on another phone?
Everyone is in a group, so everyone.
Okay. Terrific. Welcome. 28th Ask the Chief Forum. Today's forum, we're going to be doing general questions and using muscle testing, which we haven't done a lot of in the past. So, be interesting. Let's see. So, is there anything that we can set up before I'm going to do the exercise, but I don't want to do that.
Not that I know of.
Okay, so we're going to start with the exercises. Right, everyone knows how it goes. Bringing this energy up, pushing density into the surface so that whatever's there can be extracted. So we're going to do 3. And the so and approximately 12 inches apart. So okay, I'm going to start pushing that energy. You should start to feel it already. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Good. Okay, I'm going to increase that. All right. Anyone not feeling that, let me know. Okay, terrific. So we're going to take this and we're going to contain ourselves. First, containing. Then we're going to contain our environment, rooms, wherever you are, containing. And containing the forum. So I'm going to push those parameters out. Starting. 1. 3. And 4. So great. So I appreciate everyone sending in questions. A lot of good questions. And I'm a little inspired to start off with a question from the youngest member of my Psychic Warriors, having to do with dragons and dinosaurs. And the dragon that led us to do a little bit of research as to how dragons are interpreted in this realm on the planet. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through some definitions. Or not so much definitions, but yes. Okay, so we already pre-warned and you got an answer.
We already what?
Pre-warned about
Yes.
the question? Okay. All right, so Marley, are you there? Marley?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm there.
I'm here.
I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, great. Now you had some questions about dinosaurs and dragons.
Yes.
So what was your question? What did you want to know about dragons?
Because about the Haku thing.
Oh, Haku, the Spirited Away.
Yes.
Okay. So was it that you wanted to know whether dragons were good or bad or something like that?
No. I want to know are they still alive? Or they dead? Or the dinosaurs are still alive? Or they dead? Or they not real?
Okay. Very good. Well, they are real. But as far as how people interpret, what's a dragon, what isn't a dragon, can vary. So there are times that, and this is for the broad, for everyone, that so there are such things as nagas. They call them na here in Thailand and probably other areas of Asia. And there are times that individuals will consider a na or a naga to be a dragon. But they're in the sense of how things are energetically in consciousness. We do have that dragons do exist as a consciousness. The interpretation of dragons may have something to do with how the energy moves when someone sees something that resembles.
Yeah, they have lots of programs where I hear before about like they say about when you see the moon, the dragon like flies around the moon.
And well, I would ask you where you got that, but I probably some folk tales or something like that. For your answer, we're just going to muscle test, just to answer that question as far as like whether that's a true story or not. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So first, I'm going to do protection on the day.
They have a deadline like us.
Something's coming up. Okay. Whenever. Okay. So the associates will be helping answer these questions. Oh, let's see. Okay, please. Right. So something's fighting. They're starting to pull. Let's see if I can get to the question before I have to deal with these guys. They're still fighting. All right. So usually, if it's a question that they're afraid of the answer, of me giving an answer to, they will start to, mess with your arm. So at this point, I'm going to deal with these guys. Got to push them out, burn them out. All right. So the story of the dragon flying around the moon, I would say maybe the origins from Asia. This kind of went down funny. China. Like a Chinese fable. Is that true? No. Story? No. So it's considered make-believe. So, question, do dragons exist? Yes. So, and the interesting thing was that some consider that there's dragons in different places. There's a lot of different types of dragons. What the associates consider to be a dragon are just two entities that they consider to be dragons. So two arms going down funny, kind of. Okay, so literally the kind of two here, but there are dragons elsewhere in the universe. So also, I think what I would like to do, having to do with how people interpret dragons, I'd like to maybe get into that first and then go a little further. So there's certain areas of the world before Ms. A gets started where different cultures see dragons differently.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you can get started.
Yeah, so you were talking about two original dragons, and that are you saying that they're descendants or something like that from them, descendants, or just two?
Well, you didn't ask that question before, so we're gonna have to muscle test on that. So the question was, are they descendants of, I guess, other dragons, the ones that are here? And it's going down slow, then went down fast. Descendants of other dragons. But they still stick with what they consider to be dragons, like being considered to be dragons, excuse me, are two in number. And I believe there are different names for them also, depending on what part of the world you're in. And the symbolism for one group was that one of the dragons symbolized the heavens, which is the sky, and then the other dragon symbolized earth. So there's a lot of times there's a confusion as to what's a naga, which nagas tend to be very much earthbound in how they in where they roam. Their realm was within earth. And okay, so I guess we can get into in other words, what areas of how different groups see dragons. Pretty much what we read this and I'll just let you have before.
So, you were talking about two original dragons, or the two that like is considered dragons, and that how they were perceived in Asia and how they were perceived in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you?
Yeah, perceived Asia, the West, even in Africa.
Yes,
they have
in
a
Africa.
perception of them in the Oceania.
So, I'll just start with the originals that they are and their names. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, so if it came from the West, they usually gave it they renamed these dragons. And then in Africa they have a name, and maybe even in Asia they have a different name, just depending. And in African lore there's two. Damballa, the cosmic rainbow servant, and Aida, the rainbow goddess. And just let me know when you want to stop and muscle test. And it says Damballa was the serpent of the earth, and Aida was the snake of the sky that brought rain and rainbows.
So, in essence, well, I'll just muscle test, say that I already did, but let's do it again. That these are the like beings associates considered to be real. That these consciousnesses do exist.
And it says, and many times in artwork they are depicted as shown as intertwined serpents.
And this is in what culture? Hold on a second.
African culture, I'm assuming. It just says in art, so.
In art, but generally art is art is cultural. So with that part, then they're not talking about what group represents it that way. We're not going to pay attention to that.
No,
So
I do believe it's in African culture, because it says two examples of African dragons, but
okay.
they don't know that these dragons have been renamed in other cultures.
Well, they have when we're researching that Asia, they have a different name for them as well. In certain areas of which country in Eastern Europe.
Yes, I have that example.
Yeah, what's the name?
And the name of that is. It says in the European culture, the dragon that lurks in European stories are considered powerful, wicked, and dangerous. In Christian tradition, they symbolize Satan or sin. And some nest in caves and guard marvelous treasure, and when hungry, they may snatch and devour sheep or cattle that wander too near. So that's what they feel. Or
Yeah, that's a general Western
yes.
Interpretation. But I know that there's one, I forgot exactly what part of they used the name Drac or Draco. And when we're going to the origins of that, of the Drac or Draco, we did come across Satan.
Yep.
You know.
Like in the movie Harry Potter, where it's like Draco Malfoy.
Mhm.
That's the origin of the.
Of course, Harry Potter is out of the West. So that's a Western interpretation of dragons. Now we're going to go to the Asian.
Yes. So, like you said, that in the Czech lore,
Oh, the Czech,
Czechoslovakian
okay.
lore, it's Brunenski Drak. That's what they call it, and
Okay.
that's actually the rename of the African dragons.
Well, the dragons aren't really necessarily African. They're Dunian.
Yes, they're from Dunia, but they had labeled them like that.
Yeah, but Africa had given them the label and have a correct interpretation of them, as well as Asia, where you'll find out when Ms. Avery's having to do with Asia.
So Asia, so we we could start out with Korea if you want me to, or I could go to.
Okay, we're starting out with some places that we haven't talked about. Go ahead.
Okay, the symbol of the dragon has been used extensively in Korean culture, both in Korean mythology and ancient Korean art. They represent good fortune, spiritual clarity, and in Buddhism, they are the protectors of the Buddha and the temples.
And then you had like a general, I think it was Chinese.
Yes, Chinese, it means good luck.
Yeah,
In the
snake.
Chinese culture, the dragon represents good luck, strength, health, and also the element yang. Dragon is unique because it is the only mythical creature of all the animals in the Chinese zodiac. There's a lot of Chinese are all about fortune, whether it means having a kid or
Yeah, but you're saying as far as mythical would be considered mythical, it's like for the Chinese birth date symbols, constellation date symbols. There's like horses, rats, snakes, and these types of creatures. So they're saying that they're considering the dragons to be mythical because they don't necessarily see them, roaming around like they see horses and and rats and snakes and monkeys and things like that. So it has some significance in that regard. I know that you said something about I guess it's planned in China with births where there's a lot more children born during the year of the dragon than any of the other symbols. And we're assuming that that probably has something to do with planning. And we got a yes on that. Planning birth because they believe in it as luck. Also, when the African interpretation of sky and land, that it means balance. So there's like the two, and they literally represent balance. So when we were doing research, and when I saw, literally was able to see them and pulling them from where they were literally locked in, they did come up and do a swirl around one another and became this energy. So it's like sparks and light, literally. So I think that's probably where the serpentine reference comes from, how they move energetically. And even in the movie, they're having a connection here. So even, are you uncomfortable? Okay. So even in the movie Spirited Away, if you notice how Miyazaki had illustrated the dragons, it was as though they're swimming through the sky. So anyway, that's literally the information that we got on dragons. Yes, as far as the associates say, they are real, and depending on what part of the world you're in, depends on whether they're considered to be a positive symbol or a negative symbol.
not just the West views the dragon as negative, so does the Aztecs, for example. It says the Aztec dragon, or Quetzalcoatl, was one of the most revered gods in ancient Mesoamerica, a powerful combination of bird, rattlesnake, and feathered serpent, and had its talents in every facet of Aztec culture and organized the original cosmos and was involved in the creation of mankind.
So when we got that, I will ask the associates, is that true? And they get a no. And so whatever they considered to be a dragon was it a dragon? And they got a no. Was it a nod? They got a no. Did it exist at all? also I'm getting that it's contrived. So it's like whoever's writing the history of the Mayans are just basically twisting it around and creating things. And this happens with a lot of folklore from a lot of different cultures, depending on how it's translated, and then a lot of cases it's translated incorrectly on purpose. Because whatever other group has their own agenda and their own belief system that they want to put in place over the belief system of those who probably have, since they probably have a much older and more ancient culture. Get a yes on that. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm trying to fight it, but you got a yes.
So I asked, so someone said that those who wrote this story about Quetzalcoatl and how his involvement with creation of mankind is similar dense entity writers as in the Christian idea of Adam and Eve, and that he was made in God's image. And it's a story about Yin of Yin, actually, instead of Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, so it's in the story of Yin of Yin, I'm gonna yes on that. The story of dragons. No, story of Yin of Yin. Yes. So with that, I think we, if anyone has any questions, further questions about it, you can ask now, or we'll just move on to the topic of dinosaurs, which will probably just be kind of quick. So the question will be, you see the bones of dinosaurs in museums and so on and so forth. Did dinosaurs exist? Yeah, and that one sounds funny. Okay, still wants to go sluggish. This, yeah, it said kind of like more or less. I don't know what that means.
Can I ask this question?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, did you?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I get a no, so.
Oh.
No.
Take it away, boss.
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, never mind.
Okay. So they would say, let's go to an interesting point or whatever. That are the ages of dinosaurs in the sense of how society or the scientists, whatever they say, are dinosaur fossils as old as they say they are? And I get no. It's less than 14,000 Earth years, less than 14,000 years ago. So I've asked other questions having to do with how old something is. It always comes up around 14,000 years, somewhere around that amount of time that they existed. Now, were they natural introductions to Dunia? Were they, something that manifested on Dunia naturally? They get a no on that. So let's say there was something that was literally brought to Dunia, to Earth. I get a yes on that. So, these are just questions. I haven't really, some of them I reviewed earlier, and as you're saying, there's certain things that Ms. A is reading that I've heard for the first time. So I'm just going basically by the associate, and I trust the associates more than I trust anyone. They've been extremely accurate over the years with information that I've been asking about. So,
They were brought by Yin of Yin because they introduced predator and prey concept.
So the introduction of predator and prey was brought into play here by Yin of Yin, and it makes sense. Also, things having to do with things that are parasitic, that feed on the essence of other consciousness. That was an introduction, from the Yin of Yin from Denson. So they would take balanced consciousness and then just distort it to behave in a way that was not naturally meant to behave. So even when we're talking about just, the pesky insects and certain types of creatures that literally become a pest to you, pestilence isn't natural to the universe. So pestilence is something that was manifested or baked, they're even using the word manufactured. Okay. So as far as like any questions about anything else about dinosaurs other than, yeah, they existed. There was an introduction into this realm having to do with the predator prey, I don't know, system. Right. So if there's no questions, we're going to, and thank you, Marley, for those questions. They're really good and very. Right. So I think we're going to. Anyone? There's some movement. Okay. No question. All right. We were going into some of the questions, or did what you?
Yes. So it's up to you. One of the questions.
Don't seem to be too happy about today's forum for whatever reason. Well, they're never happy, but anyway.
So this is a question about a personal, about a quote that they would like to know from a Neo-Shamanic perspective. And the quote is, "The way you do one thing is the way you do everything."
Okay. And we did notify you that we were going to ask you about that interpretation.
Yes.
Yes. So what was what you felt about that particular quote?
Yeah, definitely. And so the first time I heard the quote, excuse me, the first time I heard the quote, I was like, okay, I see why you would say that because it's the same person in every scenario. But the longer I've sat and revisited the quote, it kind of doesn't sit right with me because I feel like every scenario causes for a different type of energy. And even with the stuff that you've been teaching me about, everything is moving, everything is energy, everything is fluctuating, everything is changing every single day. Even by that, it kind of to me invalidates the quote. And even just thinking, like, for example, a small example, the way that I create my music isn't the same way that I am at my job. It's totally different ways of being, totally different energy. The way I would talk to my boss in an interview isn't the same way I would talk to my friend. And those are just small examples, and there's a million different things. But I just felt like it was is this a quote that people say to keep you in a type of box? And I know that you would have an interesting perspective on it, but that's my take on it.
Well, you did very well with that.
Awesome.
Which caused a lot of pain. So let me go a little further. Just make sure these guys are handled.
What he said is actually causing stuff to come out of his chest.
Okay, so she's having things coming out of your chest, and the verification, because you're wondering about it and saying, well, this is my interpretation. You're getting more into a broader, way of thinking about things. And it was exactly right on the money. Things are always in motion. And so what it ends up being is like an empty mantra, empty rhetoric that really doesn't go that deep. And there are tons of those types of sayings, and you'll find that there are people who will use it. But if you really were to go ask them, to go in depth about what it means, I doubt very much that they'd be able to explain it to you in any logical way. So the answer that you gave in your interpretation was spot on. There's not much I can add to it, to tell you the truth.
No, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. Thank you for the question.
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to clear whatever's trying to come out. Hold on a second.
And it started coming out of the chest.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now that was someone else's comment than a question. The sincerity thing.
Oh,
That's
it
someone
was
else
a
that was.
comment about, what Eric just did.
Okay, that was your comment.
It caused a
Okay.
good purge out of the chest.
Okay, so we're going to move to the next question.
Next question is, why do some dense entities, ghosts, spirits, etc., travel via ley lines instead of maybe only by foot or flying or what, teleporting or what? What makes
Someone's asking us, I guess, how dense entities or ghosts and things like that get around. There, again, like everything, there's no exactly one way of doing it. So, that's incorrect. The ley lines are to what I've experienced are like highways. So there's just like, the straight route, I-95 to this destination, or whatever highway goes from the East Coast in the United States all the way to the West Coast. So it's a straightaway to get to certain, destinations. And along the way, there are junkets. So, they get to a certain point, then they go off in this direction, that direction. It's just a faster way of moving around, I would say, for most ghosts and entities on the other side. Also, on ley lines, not only density will travel, there are light beings that will travel those lines also. Well, so as far as walking, it would be, we can almost liken you driving to a certain place, and then you park your car, and then you get out and you walk to a certain area that doesn't accommodate vehicles. So not that they're driving cars or anything like that, but it's like, they get where they're going pretty fast. And then when they decide they want to venture around for whatever reason, 9 times out of 10, it's to get their essence. Or there are other reasons. The primary reason generally has to do with getting essence if it's something that ends up in your house, for instance, or in a place of business, or so on. Generally, it has to do with ley lines that run throughout all these areas. So there are smaller ley lines that are like anywhere from just like a city street, like a neighborhood street, to a dirt road, or even like a dirt path. So when I was a kid, Father Unit would tell me about hunting when he was in the South hunting, and when I lived up in say New York in a rural area, he was true to his nature. He's looking at for like deer paths and things like that, and he would point out deer paths, which were obviously some trail, but it was made by an animal, and he would say they follow ley lines. So there's a lot of things that follow ley lines, even things that are not in the so-called spirit realm will follow ley lines. So as far as like that answering that question, that's pretty much as far as much as I feel well, if you want to talk about current conditions, as far as like ley lines, and so what I'm talking about generally is how it normally would work. How do we travel? How densities would travel up and down certain ley lines? Actually, there are people who actually can feel when they step on a ley line. That actually can feel the energy from it, or even when actually come branching off into dowsing, which I grew up with individuals who would douse in the family, which means they would douse for water and things like that. And so I can do that as well. And when you're dousing, for me, I have a couple of metal, I guess they're like metal rods that I use that are actually made for dousing. And if you get across a ley line right on top, those rods will cross over, let you know that you're there. There's been times, and I think we have on video, where I hit a pretty strong source of water, which in other words, my intent was to find water, and those rods would just start to spin separately, which is pretty intense. 9 times out of 10, they're supposed to just cross over to let you know, where you are. So if you end up in a situation where it's a strong ley line going, you may end up with this type of motion where the rods will start to just spin like a helicopter. This just means that there's a strong current of energy going through that part of the land. Okay. So what Ms. A was talking about as far as like how density was traveling up and down these ley lines is not so easy anymore because there is a influx of light beings from outside of the realm that are here now. And just for verification, is this true? This is true, just for for you guys in the audience there. And it's like how density has to travel. They have to travel in a different way now. So a lot of times they will what I call hijack or hitchhike, not hijack. Well, they don't hijack, but hitchhike. So sometimes there's some really strange types of situations that happen with some of the clients, even where someone that they may even know starts to get really clingy or touchy. Some of that has to do with feeding, density, like the use of ley lines, to get to destinations to feed and so on and so forth. But because it's it's being shut down, also because the vibration on Dunya is changing, it isn't conducive to things that vibrate at a low vibration. Therefore, they're not getting the sustenance they used to get because the atmosphere is no longer cooperating with them. And you'll see even signs of that, which is just going from ley lines but into everything that's interconnected. You will find that there are people who are starting to look a bit more distorted in their features, which means it has to do with how much density is that person still has in their avatar, in their body. And I call it glamour down, but it's not quite glamour down yet. Glamour down is something that's even more intense. It's actually it's like some of the images that Ms. A have shown in the past of people looking in mirrors and seeing something that does not look like them reflecting back. That's like a glamour down situation. The person is looking at some aspect of themselves. Sometimes they're looking at something just plain, pretending to be them in order to feed. So there are individuals who are looking at themselves and seeing a distorted figure, and it is actually a reflection of how they really look. So anyway, all I can say is, as far as with the how density travels around, they can't travel the way that they used to.
There's videos of like or where it looks like a person is just fell out of nowhere right into the busy traffic, and they look they looked shocked as to where they appeared.
Yeah, well, it's like someone called. I think you were talking about teleport in this particular question. Mm-hmm. I would say, well, the question is there such thing as teleportation? It's going down because if it's not exactly that, because that's a term that has been chosen, in this world. So a lot of language will leave out things that will really explain what's going on the other side. It's something like it, but it's not the same as teleportation.
They said that sci-fi has twisted the concept of.
Well, because sci-fi, everything in the Matrix is made to support the Matrix. So if you're expecting to get truth from a sci-fi movie, you're fooling yourself. You can, if you have enough information, if you pay attention enough to the forums and so on, what I'm telling you, you will be able to get a glimmer of what's going on when you're seeing some things in these movies that will literally tell you that some of the stuff that they're showing is really, is really, what happens here. But they just mask it with, oh, this is a fantasy movie, this is a sci-fi movie, this is fiction, and so on. But in reality, they're showing things that they're really doing. So someone said, well, how to the Matrix? But the Matrix, they really tried to clutter it up as much as they could, but it's such a good story that they weren't able to hide everything. And actually, so much more of it came out that it still affected people, even though folks didn't quite understand really what they're looking at. Because, there are folks who feel like there's this altruistic system or something in this realm, that is supportive. But the Matrix is telling you everything. The movie, everything is made by density. It constructed the Matrix. Therefore, everything in the Matrix is going to support them, and not your dreams or your hopes. Again, using the term we lead in, that's literally what, amongst other things, but I kind of like that term we lead in. It really explains it in a certain way that this is what people are. This is what consciousness is, that we lead in. So they're just going to drop whatever, to get whatever they can out of you. And they don't care what order it's in. So someone thinks, well, it should be orderly, that we can, it's like, we don't really care because you're already slated for the, for the dump, for the trash heap, for Black Boots. We don't care what happens. So you just want innocence, man. So they find all kinds of ways to trick people into walking in a circle, hoping. One of the things that came up recently had to do with New Age, with one of the clients, and I just decided, you know what? I never really asked that question. How many people truly, honestly feel that their little spiritual searches will amount to anything? And I got that none of them really believe that they're going to actually reach this enlightened goal vis-a-vis their spiritual practices. Is this correct? Yes. I thought, whoa, I thought maybe somebody believes in it, but they're hopeful because they have nothing else. They feel they have nothing else to grasp onto. So they grasp onto whatever is there in hopes that they'll stumble upon enlightenment or something that's really real. But a lot of times that's folks who've been around a little while, doing they're searching these things little, but it is like a little search really, because that's how they view it. I'll give them a little something. Give them a little religion. Give them a little New Age. Give them a little mysticism. A little this, And always in a sense where no one can get together with any of these disciplines and make sense of anything that would actually help them escape or change the vibration of this world.
There would have been a change, but everything was just going to shit.
Yeah, we've got thousands of years of certain types of spiritual, disciplines. But other than someone pointing to, oh, look, you got an iPhone now. Yeah, but there's still all this suffering, all this, drama, all this trauma, all this hate, and all this stuff. If any of these spiritual beliefs were really, really on my, should they be better? Instead of this hopes for better, hopes for better, hopes for better. I just use this analogy of a woman who is married to a wife beater, and he beats her up every weekend. But then he tells her, "I'll change. I'll change." And she's so broken that she wants to believe it because of why going out on her own or going off the beaten path scares her more than staying in an environment where she's being abused. So fear, control is how to control what we decide to do, how we think. So we have certain belief systems. If you think this way, oh, you're sinning. Think this way, you're bad. You think, all these, don't go outside. Don't step over that line. Bad things will happen. And my question as a kid was, what kind of bad things? I read about really bad things, other than a lot of pain before you die. I was like, well, that would be discouraging as a kid, But what beyond that? So they invent things like, hell, purgatory, some other nasty places that you will go to, and as though this realm that you're in right now isn't nasty enough. So I said, well, at least you don't have little demons with pitchforks, poking at you while you're sitting in your apartment, depressed as crap, And so being depressed, being overly angry, being overly anxious, being, just stressed, that would be considered a hell. In my book, that's a hell. feeling hopeless, feeling, just bored, stiff. So there are individuals actually who don't mind taking some pain because they feel that makes them feel alive. So anyways, this is the confusion and this is the insanity of this realm. But I don't want to get too far away from what we were, from the questions. So I think I covered that, so we can.
Next question is, what is your take on the concept of generational trauma? Seems like people are more aware of this and trying to release it.
Well, generational trauma, and probably somebody who's who's quite a bit younger, can pose that question. It's a good question because if you don't, if you're not aware of it, you should ask. So it's a good question. But they introduced that about, I guess, the late 1970s. So not anything recent. It's just another way of jerking people around and thinking that you're going to get help when there's no help out there. So just talk about your trauma. Let's sit there and talk about your trauma. Let's talk about it, and what tools are you using to heal the trauma other than this? That doesn't help anything. Trauma is very energetic. Things that are affecting the mind are very energetic. It's very real what's going on. In spite of the fact that people here cannot think radio, they're all linear. So they try to deal with a radio thing in a linear fashion, which means there's a lot of factors to how someone behaves or what happens in a given situation. So family trauma, where I go with it, don't get too many challengers or anything about how I approach it. Because I approach it from the truth. And if they could debunk what I'm saying, I probably would have a conga line of people trying to debunk it, but nobody's in line. And I know that people do watch what I'm posting. So that is literally just another to make you think. It's like New Age or something, to make you think that you're moving in some direction when that's not the intent. And it's not set up for you to move anywhere.
And Chief, you taught us, the people have become in this realm. They've become like wheelie bins, and they are taught to protect the trash that density puts inside of them. And
Yeah.
Want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And then they're saying, oh, we want to release generational trauma, but say that piece of junk is at the bottom of the wheelie bin. And they're like, I only want that thing out, but without taking anything else out, because I'm protecting this other shit. I just want to get that thing down at the bottom, and that's not possible.
Well, when they're talking about, what's it, family trauma or whatever? Generational trauma. So then, they have you on this trek to, great grandpa, what was his issues, and, grandpa's issues, grandma's issues, and so on and so forth. And when why it's really hard for a lot of folks to actually figure it out is because, again, television, linear thinking. So even with clients, there are times that we'll talk about some things, but they can't seem to add on to the whole picture. So let's say, grandpa, is incestuous and a bad tempered person and so on and so forth. Say, well, grandpa is really this way or that way, or great grandpa, or somebody said, well, there's times that he wasn't that way, but there's times he drank or he would. So no one's figuring in attachments. That they're like the movie, Mad Detective. There are attachments. There are things that influence how people behave from day to day, sometimes from moment to moment. Sometimes it's a dominant, overseer that influences how that person behaves. So again, if people have had past expressions, which they have, what from the past expressions is literally spilling over into the the current expression. So when we talk about wheelie bin, it's just, garbage from that expression in the wheelie bin. Garbage from the expression before in the wheelie bin. So you're born into a new expression, and they spend a certain amount of time beating out your memories, beating the memories of the other side out of you, which I'm quite sure everyone understands, and even one of my mine's here, and one of my warriors, quite young, is still connected to the other side because someone, myself, came in and interrupted the, amnesia process of getting her to forget where she came from. But all she can remember is this was on the other side. She doesn't remember where she was when all of this happened, or when she came into being in the universe. So you got all of these things going on. Family trauma, how does that affect? Wrong question. Family trauma has nothing to do with anything. It's just the result of everybody's garbage and everyone being dumped in the same space. And now they're struggling for, jockeying for position, or they're feeding on certain ones who are put there as food and so on. That's what's real. Nobody, they want to think that they're working on something. And when I lived in New York City, I knew a number of people, I was in profession, about professionals who I have a therapist and I go to my therapist every week. Therefore, I'm working on myself. But when you see them in action, you see that this person has a lot of issues. And I said, I don't think, the therapist is helping you at all. Some say therapists help them do this, that, certain things, but what it is, maybe putting a Band-Aid on one thing and then send them on their way. So, well, I no longer want to smoke cigarettes, but I'm still, got addictive behavior. Now I'm eating tons of chocolate, or I'm, into something else that's out of whack. So I don't believe in any, of these, little movements, where people are trying. That's density telling you, trying to convince you. People are working on themselves. Have hope. How many freaking decades have they been doing that? Even centuries. Because there were an enlightenment period in the West in the, I think, the late 1800s of folks, doing seances and so on and all this stuff. And my question when I was attracted to watching these types of programs and reading these types of books about it, I said, so what's the end result in the end? But you know what they said? Is it true that there's a ghost? Holy moly, man. How many times have I asked the same stupid question? How many centuries? They'll ask that question as long as the people who are programmed to just go, and not think for themselves. There's no other life in the universe but here. Yep. No life, no, yep. That's a program. If you ever find yourself just accepting that kind of nonsense, you're programmed. It's all about just keeping you running, just like the wife beater just tells her what she wants to hear. She's like, okay. He says he loves me. So anyway, with that, we'll move to the next question. Well, let's go into tattoos, I think. There was a question about tattoos.
Yes. Archie tells me about how tattoos carry the artist's energy. The more I'm curious about tattoos, could you explain anything about the origins of tattoos, or what was the real reason behind getting tattoos? And someone commented that having tattoos lowers or weakens your etheric energy.
Well, yeah, anything that's covered with the same brush is always wrong. There's various reasons for why in the past individuals who get tattoos, it just turned into something else, more like a fad type of situation over the last 30 years. Tattoos, and I'm going to go with the associates on this. Where tattoos arrive somewhere else, and it had a number of different reasons, purposes. You know, tattoos can be very, very energetic, and you, depending on who's tattooing you, depends on the kind of energy that's in the tattoo. So again, it's like individuals, they're having a fit here, and it's like individuals who decide that they want to take do an ayahuasca trip, and then they just go to the the ayahuasca quickie mart down in South America and think that they're getting a real deal when they're not really getting anything that's going to be helpful 9 times out of 10. So if they're doing it as a fad, then it doesn't really have any benefits except when you're doing tattoos and you're just going to random tattoo artists to have this person one focusing their energy. Because artwork is energetic. So being that I was in the field, and Barry Thompson said it, my energy was always in the work that I was doing. And I could tell by how certain individuals would look at the work I would do as to how it would affect them, has to do with how much energy, effective energy was in the work that I was doing. So with artists, they're always putting their energy and their focus into whatever they're creating, really. And if you're going into a lot of different tattoo artists, you're just really more or less becoming, I would say, well, this is what they're saying, a scribble pad. So you're if you're getting all these different types of tattoos from these different types of people, it's like you're allowing someone to just doodle on your body. And even if you want some symbols, it's something that's symbolic, if you're just going to a random person whose energy is just messed up, whatever positive symbolism that you want will not come through.
Some tattoo artists do curses.
Yeah, there are those who have to do curses. There have been some joke tattoos that happened back when that was back in the 70s, late 70s, 80s. Certain individuals would come to Asia from America and get this really big tattoo with Asian characters, Chinese characters on their back, and it would be a word like stupid or something like that. But they can't read it, but they say, oh, it looks really cool. Like, wow, look, it's an Asian characters, pretty characters and so on. But literally, it's an insult. And the person obviously doesn't like whoever it is that's sitting there. Not good for business, of course, but they figure, tourists, he's not coming back, or she's not coming back. So there are also individuals who are more nefarious who are dealing with dense magic. We're literally opening you up like a can of sardines so that they can consistently feed on your energy through that tattoo that they put on your body. So just like everything, you got to research everything that you do. And especially if you're doing something that's very, very permanent, like tattoos, it's always good to research the person. And I get it if you didn't do it before you started having sessions with me. Yeah, it's just like, a fad. Everything's a fad. Just like I said with ayahuasca, ayahuasca is a fad. It's not a toy. It's not something to play with. So individuals will go and do an ayahuasca ceremony or whatever, and some of these are just ridiculous. Go to some retreat, they have some guy saying that he's a shaman or something when he's not. If anything, he might have learned a few tips from his uncle or something like that, and then he decides he's going to play shaman, but he knows how simple-minded people can be about these things, and a lot of them, and we did the research on that online even, that a lot of individuals end up with major depression after just going to these random people. And I had a client that came back from South America with major depression after she did that and DMT. Now, I know someone who, who knows about both of those things. And the first thing she said, why in the hell would you be doing DMT and ayahuasca? The DMT is in ayahuasca, but why would she do both of them? And this person, one, actually, I think her health started to go, and this other one, she just ended up in this extreme depression behind it. And it was very similar to what we researched as to what happens when people are just going willy-nilly and doing these ayahuasca trips. But even on Google, they were telling you why, because they don't know why. Or if density does know why, they're not going to tell you that you're going and jacking yourself up, Or, and I've talked about ayahuasca before, but it seems like it lends itself to this conversation.
Originally, tattooing was just an expression of beautification in the universal reality.
I still have deeper meaning than just beautification. Let's say beautification have deeper meaning than that. But even then, I'm not on it. I have to find the language in order to actually tell you what it really means. It has meaning in its origins. Where they say the origins of so they're saying that there's, again, this particular star system has come up for a number of years, and I never, I've heard the word, but never heard it relayed to a star system called the Kalic star system. Now, that's information saying that's where the original pharaohs came from, was Kalic. Those who were here on Dunia came from Kalic. Said that the practice of tattooing came from that star system as well. So I'm asking if any other star system is it originated there. But like anything in the universe, it starts somewhere and then it expands outward. No one owns it. So it's not like, oh, we're the ones who did it, and ego. It's literally everything in the universe is put out there for every consciousness in the universe. Because again, symbolism of what? If you really are out in the Supreme Consciousness universe, you will consider yourself one. So one with everything. No separation, no ego. So you feel bad like somebody, oh, so-and-so's got a really nice gold, outfit today. If you want a gold outfit, they say, hey, I can hook you up. Don't say, oh, you're trying to look like me. You like this? Hey, here. I'll show you how to do it. There you go. Thus, another expression shared amongst everyone. No competition. They're having a little problem, aren't they? So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, where are we going to say?
Oh, okay. Anyone has it, I can go on.
Excuse me.
So you're saying that in its origins, it has a very positive meaning, but how it is here with everyone being wheelie bin, it gets messy.
So it becomes a fad here, literally. But also it's a fad and a means for certain types of nefarious characters to play around with their dense magic. And one of the things that I figured, which is good that I was going to share on this particular forum that has come up, and I've shared with certain clients in private session, that when they're talking about, really like these black magic, I call it dense magic, and so on and so forth. And I asked, I said, well, what's the percentage of people who are dabbling from extreme to just dabbling with dense magic? And they said 80% of the population of the planet. But then they said more. The others are afraid, for whatever reason, which is less than 20%, are afraid of dealing with it. Maybe because they really believe in whatever their religious doctrines are saying, and they may be the few who actually believe in it. But most who are involved in religion are, I would say, more like, I could say 90% plus, dabbling in it. And even when it comes to prayer, is a form of dabbling in this. It depends on what your intent is when you're praying. You can tell someone, I'm praying for you, but you may not even like that person. So I hope that your motherhood dies. You know, hey, let's get here with our prayer group. Hey, you know, when someone starts talking about prayer groups, I said, no, thank you, I'm out. Because you have no idea what everybody is thinking about and what their attachments are that are literally there to stink up the situation.
I've been in many prayer groups, and in the particular experiences that I've had, sometimes people will be praying out loud for an individual, and it was usually someone who didn't want to be a part of the church. They would be praying for them, and usually they would be praying like their desires for their lives. Like they don't have the right to have their own desires. It's like they're putting their own desires for them.
Yeah. So in other words, wanting to use all the other praying energy to literally succeed at whatever their goals are.
He should be a Christian, or she should be a Christian. I pray that she'll come to church more. I pray that she'll be a good Christian. It's always like that, and that person just trying to live their lives.
Yeah, literally. So again, there's a lot of selfishness that goes on in this realm. It's just part of the course. It's part of the program. You know, and that's not to excuse anyone for being selfish. You know. Again, I was going to go with that. But was there anything else that was with that?
Tattoos?
Yeah, with the tattooing. Again, I think as I put it, anyone want me to clarify any more about the tattooing? I missed something that you really, you know, and don't be shy if you really want to have a question that will take this a little further, that will help you understand even more. Okay. All right. So we can move to the next question. Yeah.
So should I go to a different type?
Oh, we're talking about lots, right?
Go for it.
Let's go around it right now.
Around it for now. Okay. Right. So I grew up eating soul food. Now that I'm more aware of the ingredients that I cook with, I was thinking about all the ingredients that are in soul food. Corn, cornstarch, syrup, potatoes, lots of white sugar, everything that Chief says is not good to eat. I just think it's interesting how they promote soul food on holidays or special occasions. I always felt sluggish after eating afterwards, and sometimes would hear more voices in my head.
Well, that has the amount of that has to do with people's concepts of tradition, where they don't question tradition. It's like a person who decides that they're going to be part of a spiritual group or religion or something because their parents were, or their grandparents were. Tradition. And so tradition is just another way for density to just, in other words, get over on you, so that you don't do any research, because if you question tradition, you are disrespecting your ancestors and you're disrespecting tradition, like tradition is actually a consciousness that's, that'll get mad at you if you question it. So I grew up in a situation where, a lot of soul food, so-called soul food. The mother unit, she decided to get off of certain things. She didn't get off of everything, but she decided, not to eat pork. These guys used to eat, this ham and stuff during the holidays. And I remember how it tasted. I liked it as a kid. But when we got away from it, and then when I was, I say, marginally reintroduced a long time ago to it, I noticed that it, some I tried, that it would affect my energy, it would affect my stomach. And just as the person who posed this question said that it made them feel sluggish. So white sugar is definitely not good for you. This is overly processed for a reason. Corn is definitely, because one of the things with corn, and particularly yellow corn, it has been modified. And a person will think, oh, well, in the 1900s, they started modifying. No. This stuff came in modified. This is not the only existence in the world. And they don't like this. So excuse me while I have this. question having to do with modification, which goes along with food. When I really started to look into that some decades ago, was when I was looking for a family dog. And there's all these different breeds out there. And so I was just looking generally, wasn't really looking for any deep study, but of course, I think radially. So I looked up certain dogs who have certain characteristics, and I was looking for a dog that I figured would have proper characteristics for my environment, my family units, and found that all these pedigrees, and there are those who are in that field who know that these pedigrees were all engineered. So one would think, oh, engineering, bioengineering, so on and so forth. Oh, that's the 1900s, or late 1900s, middle to late 1900s. No, it's been like for thousands of years. So how do you get a collie? How do you get a German Shepherd? How do you get a Great Dane? Or the dog that I got, how do you get a Boston Terrier? When I found the Boston, I said it's pretty cool, but you really have to get it from someone who's a good breeder, or else you get one of those really odd-looking dogs, with them. And they were kind of odd because they hadn't really worked the kinks out, because that breed was created in the early 1900s. So supposedly it never existed before the early 1900s, Bostons. And there are other breeds that were recently genetically created, and they were creating them for certain things. Like there are certain terriers were designed to chase rodents and things like that, and catch rodents and things like that. I almost had the other one, that Jack Russell, which are really funny dogs, but I sure as hell wouldn't want to own one, because they're in their own little world or whatever. And the woman who was the breeder for the Boston, she said, you know what, you did something I didn't even do, was research the freaking dogs. She got her kid a Jack Russell, and she said she can't stand the thing because it's just like her house is just a place for him to squat, and he doesn't really pay much attention to whatever it is she wants. He doesn't pay attention to orders and whatever. And I've heard this with other people, and I've run across people who've had them. So all these different animals were designed for certain things. These dogs like to dig, which means that they will go after rodents like terriers. And at times, there's some funny stories about someone looking for the dog that's gone for several days, and then they find that it's in a hole somewhere. It's digging after something for 2 days straight. Kind of crazy. But anyway, all that to say that same thing with food. There's certain foods that are not good. And that's because they were designed to subjugate the energy of whoever's eating it. Also, control. So a lot of foods are primarily to bump up and boost the programming, support the programming. So, yeah, folks say, yeah, soul food, tradition, so on and so forth. Yeah, some stuff is cool. It's good. But when you start to talk about certain things like the white sugars, a lot of this white sugar and so on and so forth, and a lot of corn and there's a number of foods like I have clients in Asia who I had to tell them you're going to have to stop eating pork, but eating the domesticated white pig, bad. But if you were to eat it's like the hill tribes have the black pigs, kind of longish hair, so on and so forth. Those are not modified, so you're not going to run into the same trouble with your energy being subjugated as when you eat those types of. But the white pork, which is and I think we actually looked up the history, but I didn't have it planned for today. Sorry about it. That where the origins of the white pig comes from. But for some reason, it's everywhere. They're everywhere. Just like they just ship it everywhere. When the system wants to cover its turf and subjugate its masses, that's what they'll do. They'll promote certain things. Another one which is kind of interesting for people is apples. Now, if apples are, I should say, distilled as far as the juice, you can get away with drinking the juice. But raw, not good. So cooked, it's less harmful, still harmful. So those who like apple pie, like I love apple pie. You know, I stopped eating apple pie because also I was paying more attention to my energy, and it doesn't bode very well for my energy.
I found the pig origins.
Okay, they found big origins.
I just Googled origin of white pig. It says England. The large white breed of pig was developed in England in the late 1700s. There were nearly 4,000 large whites registered in England in 1981, ranking them as the top breed in that country. It is also the leading breed of the world.
So yeah, because it's been promoted and shipped everywhere because it serves a certain purpose. Serves a certain purpose of cutting down and lowering the vibration of. Hold on a second, we got a fight. Well, because it's everywhere, you know.
Yeah. Eat their density.
I've never visited anywhere where I didn't see white pigs. So again, if you think about it, what was the date? Is it agreed?
1700s.
So you know, naively, a lot of folks think that a lot of this biogenetic stuff happened in the 1900s. This is 17,000 in 1700s, sorry, 1700s. That's the date that they have. But I tell you, it probably happened before. So, were they actually created before then? Yes. So that's the information that they're willing to share with you. Because they said, well, yeah, okay, they've been genetically modified. All right. But you know, people are such stupid idiots that they couldn't have figured out technology. You know, way back when. So, you know, even then, 1700s, it tells you something. It's been around a long time. Been doing this stuff to people for a very, very long time. Okay, so any other question? Yes.
It said that if, Univian's thing was to destroy conscious cannibalism, they've used genetic modification over and over to destroy many other places like Dunya, Gaia, Earth.
And that's come up in some of the earlier forums, having to do with what Univian, as he coined himself that's why we use it. Use that name. That's the name he used for himself when I ended up interacting with him. So yeah, they were doing things in other star systems before Earth, Gaia. Okay. So as far as anything having to do with any other foods or whatever, I figured that I would add in literally what you're looking at when you're eating any kind of food that's highly processed. Because in reality, your body is designed in its original state, even though this is a holographic vehicle, it's still based on something that exists. So with that, how it's very complex. Their whole little thing is complex for the limited human mind, but not so complex for those who are on the outside. So it seemed like I wanted to go somewhere else with that, but I think I'm going to leave it here unless someone wants me to clarify anything.
Chief,
Yes.
it's Jessica. I was wondering about, like, are there other fruits and vegetables that are just in general not usually ideal to eat?
There are plenty, but that would be probably a private session.
Okay.
Or we could just do a forum that literally has to do with that.
Okay.
Well, Skillshare maybe on the having to do with diet. Well, I don't know how much, how many classes, well, we'll see. We can see. We're thinking about, we were talking about it with Skillshare, but the jury's still out, out on that. We're going to be doing the movie stuff on Skillshare. But as far as like, dietary stuff, anything that you have that you are concerned about having to do with your diet, but you're still eating, drinking, or whatever, it's good to bring that up in your personal sessions. But I will see, about putting something together that goes down a list, and I can tell you that the list is long. So maybe we will have to be able to do like a number of series of, but this may be depressing for a lot of people. I really like cheese, but cheese is not. Or people say, about apples. That's one of the things I was going to actually finish up with the how things are promoted. The more it's promoted in this world, the more suspect you should be. And when I was a kid, there was all this about apples when I was a kid. And, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Or if you wanted to kiss up to your teacher, you bring the teacher an apple, and, and so on and so forth. And ever since I was a little kid, the father unit had no reason to think beyond what the system told him. He would get a bag of apples, and I'm hungry, there are some apples, and I can only get through like 2 apples, and I couldn't eat it. My body was just like, no. And so later on, doing my research, I realized that the vibration of apples, it is also genetically modified. It is, and also malic acid. Someone was prescribing malic acid to some clients and said, you don't want to eat that. And even with the ladies, malic acid good, malic acid not good. All these things that literally compromise your vibration also messes with your clarity of thought. If you notice, certain foods will cause you to feel a little foggy upstairs, even though this is your filter, but in your mind, cause your mind to feel foggy.
And it's, in my opinion, it's best to ask Chief during a consultation or a session, because they'll say malic acid isn't anything, like watermelons. Is malic acid really in watermelon?
No, malic acid's not in watermelon.
Okay.
So again,
saw it on Google somewhere.
Yeah, but again, folks go for a source, and the system says this source is a source you should believe in. And a lot of in the past, they had an excuse, sort of. Just had to do a lot of legwork. I had to go to the library to get information a lot of times, like back in the 70s and 80s. But when things got more computerized, and then you get the information on the computer, you still have to, I should say, take certain things in caution that you read on the, on the computer, on the internet. But I have my backup, so when I look at something, we always go through the backup to see if it makes sense or not. And 9 times out of 10, I will feel that it's not right or it's incorrect, and then we'll back it up with muscle testing. They have various ways of doing that, where it's not like getting false information. Though there are times things will definitely try very hard to give you false information, even with your muscle testing. So, I was going to say one of the things again. Well, I guess I did clarify the thing having to do with apples, but also I don't know if anyone remembers in the States, Johnny Appleseed, where there's, I think even Disney did a short movie or short film or something about Johnny Appleseed and how he was this hero who was planting apple seeds all over the Americas, and that was his thing, which literally Disney telling you, yeah, we're spreading a poison, and honeybees in America. The First Nation people called them the white man's fly. So, it was like the press coming from the West. Honeybees, you need honeybees, you need honeybees. And they say, no, these things took over, and they pushed out the natural bees.
Because you were talking, Chief, talking about how apples actually are designed to be corrosive to one's consciousness.
So again, even with apples, it's like apples that are highly pasteurized or pasteurized tend to end up neutralizing some of the effects that was intended, for them. I would say maybe organic apple juice may still hold the toxicity of the apple. So it's going down. They're saying, but it's going down slow. They said not as intense, but still has negative effects. If you go to the clearer looking apple juice, less negative effects. I don't know if they did that by accident or whatever, but if you wanted to consume, you'd be safer consuming something as far as like apple, something like that. Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, with this, we'll move on.
Thanks, Chief.
Hey, you're welcome. Okay, well, well, let's go for, I'm toss up, but I think I'm going to go for the locks.
Okay, the locks. Okay, here we go.
So there's a question about locks, which I call locks. I used to sport them for at least 2 decades, and I always call them locks. There are those who call them dreadlocks or call them dreads. Totally different things. Okay.
I have been seeing people do things with when they're elder transitions, when they have locks. One person I saw kept a bundle of her grandmother's locks when she passed away and tied a ribbon and something else to it. And then a client I saw, she actually used one of her grandmother's locks to tie around her own hair. And that grandmother had also just transitioned. I would like to know how this affects the person's energy who is wearing it and how it affects the consciousness that transitioned. I believe Chief has mentioned something similar to people who keep other people's ashes when they transition. And I wanted to know more about the origin or deeper meaning as to why they pick these particular items to use.
Okay, well, again, there's no straight answer. It depends on the person also, but it's not good. If you think about hair, you say, well, this is to remember, the grandma or certain things about, keeping someone in their heart or whatever, which is just another word like compartmentalizing, not compartmentalizing, but fragmenting a person's consciousness and locking it. So I keep them in my heart, that's their intent is to hold on to this person instead of letting them go. So, when a person transitions, the part of it is you let them go. There are certain cultures that will, and these that I read about, that I know more intimately, have to do with some of the things I've read, have to do with the First Nations people from the United States, where there are certain groups who will sing that person's consciousness to the other side. So, and the intent is to release them out of this realm, totally. So when someone's holding on to, especially something that is part of a person's physical body, that is literally fragmenting that person and keeping that person stuck in pieces. Because there are individuals who will take pieces of a person, they're using, the person's locks to tie their hair, so on and so forth. And then they, hand pieces to this person, and so on and so forth. And even that's been done having to do with ashes. When a person is cremated after they transition, those ashes of that avatar are handed around. And also, people will focus on that individual every time they see the ashes, literally. Even if they're just walking past, there's still a focus. It's still something that those are so-and-so's ashes. Or if they're making someone's locks into a piece of like a tie, you put beads or something like that, they're still focusing on that individual that they should actually allow to move on. A lot of times where consciousness moved on in the past wasn't good, moving into another, jacked up or existence or expression, but then there's a part of them still stuck somewhere else. Again, that's the wheelie bin, concept. They don't care. Density doesn't care. Anyone thinks that, someone who's brutalizing you gives a rat's butt about you, they're fooling themselves. So they don't care whether this person's doing this, that, or the other. Am I getting essence from it? Is the essence going to the, to the dense overseers? That's what we're interested in. Well, what if I do it? I don't care. Just give me the essence. Okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. That's why there's a lot of this, you can't just like give one answer for everything that, that goes on. So somebody's using someone's hair, there's reasons. If that person was deep into dense magic and you're putting their hair on you, that's going to affect you because there are attachments connected to the hair, which are opportunistic. So, you may think, oh, this is a good idea, but there's something in the mind saying, this is a good idea. Just to show that you respect, Granny, if you wear her locks in your hair.
It's a sign of love and devotion.
Yes, a sign of love and devotion. It's like individuals who put some of their blood in a vial and give it to another person. This is a sign of your love and devotion. Oh, that's.
They even talked about in the Edo period in Japan that those who were in prostitution would cut off their own left pinky finger and give it to the guy that they wanted to.
In other words,
but couldn't.
Yeah, and also they said that they felt that the pinky finger was connected to the heart. So, however that works. Again, I would say that was another form of witchcraft against magic. Because if you think about it, okay, so he's a customer. He's not looking at to her to be his wife or anything like that. But she would like to have that expression, but she knows because of her profession that's not likely. So resorting to something having to do with dense magic and giving him that. So even if he touches it, looks at it, it affects him. Even if he throws it away, the effect is still there. Trying to bend his mind into believing that she's the one for him, but also it instills that's pretty traumatic. I don't know how an individual would feel if somebody sends you a package and they have the pinky finger in the package. Are you ever going to get that person out of your mind? I don't think so. And not in a good way, even if it's just like, yeah, this person's creepy, but they're in your mind. And there's the famous story about Van Gogh, where he cuts off his ear and sends it to this woman, of his affections. And even when I first read the story, I was like, how does that work? Obviously, he wasn't right. He wasn't mentally right for him to think that that's going to impress someone. Oh, thank you, give me a body part. Wow, I'm really into you now. It's like anything, what the hell? And also, you just disfigured yourself. I don't want to run around with a guy with one ear. So anyhow, all that to say that, it's part, it depends on what the intent is. Depends on whose hair it is. But either way, I don't care whose hair it is, it's not good to do. Definitely not good to do. And maybe the person who's actually using hair, maybe someone who's trying to, I would say, lock in that person's consciousness so that they don't end up, getting, reincarnating. They end up stuck in this void, and they will try certain methods to use these individuals like familiars on the other side. So, does the lady say that that's true? Does say that's true as well? That's another thing that happens when people do these types of things. Like I said, well over 80, probably closer to 90% of people on the planet are dabbling in some way with it. And a lot of females will excuse it if they're trying to do something to gain the favor of some person that they're interested in romantically. And this, the term "all is fair in love and war." Yeah, So it's saying, yeah, do whatever you need to do under this guise of love, which is not, love again is a loaded word. I'm about respect and consideration. So if you're trying to get someone to do something that you want to, in spite of what they want to do, where what I want is more important than you. You're just a bit actor in my world, and I'm gonna, put you in that position. I'm gonna do whatever I can to shut down your trajectory so that I can pull you into mine. So anyway, that's I would say that goes along with what with the answering the question about the locks. And again, we're clarifying for the locks just in short. Dreadlocks is something that was came about as a protest, the colonial protest in certain areas. What's mostly known is like in the West Indies, Jamaica, and so on. Dreadlocks. And a friend of mine some years ago bought me this coffee table book called Dreads, and I went and I had mine just professionally done. So they were very, very nice. But these guys, those were dreadlocks, seriously. So it was like someone was just a mat of hair just going down, down to their knees, literally, but not separate, just a big mat, like a rug. Some was one giant lock coming out, and then little teeny locks sticking out the top, and so on. But that was, they were making a political point at that time when they started to dress that way. It was literally, or to wear their hair that way. It was literally a protest against the system that had, literally how they got there through the enslavement, period. And it's just protesting those who have, I guess those who are, I'm trying to think of the right word without just, those who mistreated, those who basically been used to usurp them. So, okay, moving from that, and now that I got that off my chest.
You're talking about how someone would want to take someone else from their trajectory and fit them into their own.
Mhm.
And another, by using either hair or, even weirder attempts,
Mhm.
witchcraft and stuff. But also they can use cologne. And that's one of the other questions.
Okay, yeah, we're going to that. Nice segue.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, let's go to that.
Okay. So this client says, I stopped wearing perfume recently after you talked about it during the session. And now when I'm out running errands, I can smell density more intensely. And I can even smell other people's perfumes and colognes. My energy even feels lighter. Are perfumes and colognes just another distraction to mask density, or even a way to hinder what is supposed to be natural, which is like sensing things around you, or cutting off the ability to sense density? Ah!
Okay, that covers a bit. Perfumes have been used in a lot of ways. Again, we talked about potions, things like that. So perfumes have been used in dense magic, but just do a little muscle testing, just verification. That's been used a lot in dense magic. And also, it does shut down your ability to smell other people's energy as well. So, they don't like what they consider their secrets to be put out there. Oh, he's hissing. I will pulse you. That actually coincides with a story of someone who, a client who doesn't use colognes and things like that, and I don't use them as they don't. And someone would think, well, you don't use cologne, you do it. I said, no, I clean every day. So deceptive smell. I know there's some decades ago, and they still have those types of colognes and perfumes they call musk. And its whole intent was to arouse a person sexually. Whoever smells it is supposed to be aroused sexually by it. But also, depending on the person's vibration and their energetic makeup, two people can wear the same cologne and not smell the same. So, hold on a second. Person here. Sorry.
I remember sitting in a car with 3 older women who had that really strong rose-smelled perfume, and I felt like I was going to throw up.
Yeah, when we talk about roses, also biogenetics with roses. And I think I mentioned this before. Anything that's been promoted really, really, really strongly, you always be very suspect about it. But again, with the perfumes and covering up a person's ability to smell energy, there's a person who was talking about another person coming in and wanting to hug him. And, and he just, kept trying to avoid the hug. This person would come in to hug, and I said, well, okay, well, good, hugging people ooze and whatever. He said that wasn't really so much the issue as that the person smelled really bad and energetically bad. He had a sense, an ability, and there are people who have an ability to smell energy. Excuse me. And most of my clients, after a certain amount of time, become empathic and also can smell energy. So no one else smelled the kind of smell that was coming off this person, but this person, he could smell it. And probably someone else around, which probably wasn't saying anything about it, but he could smell, this foul smell coming off the person. Which again, if you can't hide your smell, the cologne, or someone who has who's not wearing cologne have a strong psychic sense of smell, they can sense what you are on a deeper level, even though they may not have the language for it, because the system is very big on depriving you of a language that would describe certain things that will, I would say, undermine their ability to feed and do all the things that they want to do. So if you are sensitive like myself, and someone moves into your area and the smell is so intense that it turns you off, you're not going to stay in that room with them. Therefore, that person is not going to get a meal. And there's been times where Ms. A and I, when we were working out of the studio, and the other band, where someone who had been a client for a while, but a lot of balls, a lot of garbage, a lot of attachments, and to the point where there are attachments that were coming in as that person, where they, and I've probably talked about this before, where the person wouldn't remember one session from the next line. Won't even remember what happened in the previous session. Or when individuals have an attachment, something that you think that they're protecting coming in, and I'm talking about something or I'm doing a forum and they won't remember anything I said. Because whatever's in there is literally plugging the ears and, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. And there's been a number of clients who actually would admit to me, that was the case with them. So this individual, I finally made it. Well, it's making breakthroughs, just like digging, peeling an onion, definitely. But there's points where you hit, and you have to hit with this, with an energetic sledgehammer, bam, and broke through, and the smell that came through caused my eyes to tear and me to start hacking. Ms. A, she was on the table and she didn't smell it.
And I felt like this particular energy that emitted from the client. Let's see, could I check this?
Okay, I'm gonna do a check. Okay, good, yes.
So this particular client, their energy was They really disliked me, and so it was the setup where they blocked the smell so that I would stay in the room and be asphyxiated by the toxic stuff coming out of it.
Yeah, it was so bad that I literally just said, gotta get the heck out of this room. It's really that intense. It's like being gassed. And so I was, they say, you smell it? I said, no, I don't smell it. They said, get up, get the hell out of here. And I just literally left the room, closed the door. I mean, I didn't fix it himself while he was walking around with it.
But that's why the flower arrangement fell apart and turned into ashes. That's why everything in there began to fall apart. Even the floorboards were coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that, briefly on the forum, that, the room was starting to deteriorate, having to do with the amount of toxicity that people had on them. And some really, really, really foul, energy coming off them. Some individuals coming in, I don't know why they wanted to have a session, because they came in and the things on them were giving me the stink face. And they haven't even started. I said, oh, a challenge. Okay, I got something for you. And proceeded to rip the hell out of whatever's in these people. And a lot of times, it's folks who, my friend said, I have light energy. I got really upset. I'll be the judge of that. They were so freaking contaminated with, and so many, it's like hangers on. It's like if they, worse than Sybil, if you read that book, the number of personalities. When I started pulling them out, each one had a different sound. Out to the last one that sounded straight up like a little kid, this grown person.
Your True Logic recently, Chief, he says you can't begin to work on fixing a problem that you refuse to see. Denial is a bitch. And those clients each client that said, isn't my energy beautiful? They had the most denial.
They had the most denial and generally the most toxic energy. Okay. All right. So that was part of which question was that?
Part of the question about lux.
Okay, so as it goes on a journey. So again,
excuse me,
perfume. Oh yeah,
correction.
okay, yeah. No, not bad. So again, having to do with a person's sense of smell. One is really, I think it's really beneficial to actually pay attention when your clients to smelling things. If it smells weird, if there's someone else in the vicinity that you actually trust talking to, ask them if they smell what you're smelling. So 9 times out of 10, if they're not smelling what you're smelling, that means that your psychic sense of smell has awakened. And it's very good because you walk into certain areas. It's just another sense that is natural to you as a consciousness that's not supposed to be clogged up. You're supposed to be able to sense everything around you. And so that you can sense an imbalance, so that you can avoid an imbalance. So, you're walking into a room, there's a gym that I used to go to, and there's a room where they have the treadmills, where people run and the bikes and so on, and it's air conditioned, opposed to the other part of the gym. And I would go in there, and I would always smell like this strong smell of tom yum, which is a really fragrant Thai dish with a lot of garlic. And smelling garlic coming out of someone else's pores is not pleasant. But I would go there at times and get there early, and I'm just the only one in there, and I would smell it and realize that it was some dense entity that was literally, I believe, part of that property before this place was built that would linger in that area. Because there were times, a few times I'd go in there and I wouldn't smell it. But a lot of times I would go in there and would smell it. Sometimes I go in there, there's other people in there, and I'm like, whoa, I have to get out of here, And I wonder how these people still in there, because they didn't smell it. So having a psychic sense, getting off of perfumes. There's nothing wrong with little mild fragrances or something that's really actually very natural. That's okay. But if if you're like clouding yourself up with a fragrance or whatever, what's your intent? What's the intention of your attachments for you to walk around like that? What are you trying to attract? Or who are you trying to attract?
So are body sprays a little less toxic than cologne?
Is the body spray a little less toxic? Yeah, I would say because a lot of perfumes is all scientifically what's in a lab. Some general fragrances, it's like there are women who would use vanilla
extract.
extract, and just little dab of vanilla extract. That's not a problem unless you really layering that on pretty thick. But vanilla extract, excuse me. The problem, no, it's a natural, something that's natural. Then we put alcohol in, to dilute or whatever to extract it from the vanilla seeds. So something that has a more of a natural base that you can put together yourself is a lot safer than actually going out and buying high-end colognes or any colognes, to tell you the truth.
Save money too.
Yeah, you save money on top of it. All right. So, any questions on that? Okay.
Chief's perspective. What are your thoughts on these two quotes? Be the change you want to see in the world by Mahatma Gandhi, and it always seems impossible until it's done by Nelson Mandela.
Not bad catchphrases, but the depth of it is not. It's not really that deep either. They disappeared. So anyway,
Be the change that you want
yeah,
to see in the
be the
world.
change that you want to see in the world. Probably if it was a private session or if everyone felt comfortable enough, adding their opinion to any of these things. If you do feel comfortable enough adding your opinion to it, feel free. Or just waiting to see what I have to say about it.
Yeah, so this was the True Logic that was referenced yesterday. I don't know, it's probably backwards, but the image is there on Instagram.
But be the change that you want to see in the world. But most of the people, depends on what kind of change they want to see. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's Pinky in the Brain, he wanted to take over the world. So that's the change that he wanted to see.
Yeah, in other words, you want everybody to die. Is that the change? Change. I don't know how you get the change on that in that particular position. But yeah, it really doesn't go that deep. These are sayings from Mahatma Gandhi. He transitioned out quite some time ago. So Nelson Mandela is no longer around as well. And again, someone said, well, they freed, or Mahatma Gandhi freed India from, from the British colonialists and so on. But did he really, if you really checked out anything having to do with the culture, it was forever changed over the time that England was there. So did he really free? No, he didn't really free them from the influences of the culture that came in, that intruded into their world. Some would just say, well, their culture wasn't that great. But again, it's other people's decision to express themselves in the way that they want to express themselves. It's not someone external, place to tell others how they should be. Usually that has to do with, I want your stuff, And so I'm going to tell you that you don't know how to use your stuff. I know how to use your stuff. So I would say that, with the Mahatma Gandhi thing, that even like the justice system in a lot of these places that were colonized, they still remain. Very Western, justice system still remains in those places, and they never were as worse off as they are, and most of them are now, and during the time of colonialism. So again, you're not going to find a lot of information if you're looking at it for information in English that will tell you literally what the real deal is. That these cultures had their own thing going on. were they savages waiting to be, controlled or whatever? No, they weren't savages. They're just another culture doing their own cultural thing. But somebody else came in, decided that they wanted their stuff. That's what that was all about. So even when, they're supposed to got their independence, they really didn't get their independence because there was a mindset that's there that was very much anti themselves. So what was the other one? Was in Dallas? I'm not going to beat up. Went through a lot of stuff and came out, and even I guess 20 plus years on, there's still a lot of issues that have to do with I think the Dutch who came in there and what they left there, what they introduced there over a number of centuries. And you don't just like, oh, they're out and everything's clean and hunky-dory. The influences of self-hate of the people even in those regions still remain. So anyway.
And we were talking about how, like, for example, the 16th Ask the Chief, and also in the 18th Women's Forum and the 18th Ask the Chief, you talked about most of the population being Ralphs.
Mm-hmm.
So if a Ralph sees someone being being what they want to see in the world, which is maybe nice or considerate,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to exploit that person or feel that person's a sucker or weak.
Well, most nice people don't have a good time over here. And, there are individuals who want to, again, think that they're nice, but they're not. Especially when they have an opinion about everyone and what everyone's doing, and that they think that people should follow what they think or how they think. This crosses all kinds of borders with that. We're, cliques get together, a certain, bunch of misfits get together and create this big misfit clique that's different from these other misfits. I always side with the misfits that don't fit into a group, unless they're murderers or something like that. But still, again, shit, I forgot what I was going to say. Can you repeat me?
Which one? Repeat the quote?
Yeah, the quote. That one, but you had something else. No, it was your comment after.
That if most people on the planet are Ralphs, they tend to exploit those who show kindness or consideration.
Mm-hmm.
How can any of that get done?
Yeah. So again, it's like a flat statement. Both of those are flat statements that in the end don't resolve anything. They're nice statements, but they don't resolve anything. And some folks it's almost like a throwaway. So you throw it away, then you don't have to really concern yourself with what really is behind the problem of whatever the situation is in certain areas, or just the situation on Dunia. What is behind the problem? Is it race? Not really. It's about density. It's about density. It's about what's on the other side. What is playing everyone? That's what the issue is. But then they put labels on, sexism, racism, nationalism, all these isms and so on and so forth, as a way just to confuse things. But in reality, the things behind the scenes were laughing pretty good. They're not laughing so heartily now, but they were always getting their guts because it's like telling I don't know how old the kid is before a certain parent started telling him there's a Santa Claus. Tell the kid this is there's a Santa Claus, and then they put some stuff under the tree, and the little kid comes out and he's just into Santa. This guy Santa's such a great guy, man, and and then the parents, oh, isn't that cute, a little fool? Why don't you just say the kid's a little fool? That's really what you're thinking. You think it's really funny that this little person is believing your bullshit. And this is all you parents who play that game. I don't give a shit how you think about me. I've had people talk shit about me when I didn't tell my kids there is no such thing as that. Even call my kids losers when they said there isn't. If you're telling your kids this crap, you're the loser! Thank you. So anyway.
Yeah, I've heard of that as like a parenting strategy where they'll lie to the kids. I mean, there's a, like you said, it's about balance.
It's about balance. Here's what happens, and I've said it before, but can't say it enough. So you lie to this kid, and since I've raised two, Friday, anyway, and they got to a certain age, they were ahead of the game because they didn't believe in this shit. But around the time they got into the 6th grade, there was still some kids saying, "What's Santa getting for you?" And then the other 6th graders, I guess, their parents dropped the bomb on them or said, "Yeah, that's really not Santa Claus." Or they were looking and seeing where the parents were hiding gifts. You know, where's this guy? Or some kids say, "How the hell does this fat guy get down my little chimney?" You know, and we don't even have like a chimney. So how's he get in there? So anyway, these kids are already been told or found out that it doesn't exist. And then the parents like, "Oh, they're turning teenagers. I tell them stuff. They don't believe anything I tell them. Have a problem." And I was like, "You effing idiot. Why would I believe you if you started out lying to me ever since I was a little kid?" So I'll get off my soapbox. Yeah, Easter Bunny.
Other lies, and I've even read in articles, like, I was just looking up recipes for gooseberry jam, and there was this woman who's like, "Yeah, I told my 5-year-old, I'm just giving an example, I can't remember the age, but he was young. He's like, I told him that if he can't eat the gooseberries right now because they're only for geese. But that's not even true. And when the chicken started eating them, he's like, "Mom, they're eating the gooseberries that only goose can eat." And she's like, "Oh, no problem, I'll fix it." But it's like lies.
Yeah, I'll fix it. It's just like, yeah, I just lied to you. You know, oh, that's really, respect and consideration. Get real. People are just distorted, mentally distorted. That's totally disrespectful to your kid. And I felt that would be very disrespectful to my kids to lie to them like that. I don't want them, having to figure out how to be an adult. I was trying to help them be adults. And to tell you the truth, I was raised very similar, where it's a sad guy coming down our street, Dad works really hard to buy these items that we've got for you. We're hiding it somewhere. Don't look for them. So anyway, okay. Okay, that went by pretty fast. We still have some questions, which is good. We can roll over to the next forum, starting next month. This is the end of the month now. But again, I appreciate everyone sending questions and everything. Your participation, of course. Hope I didn't shock you with that outburst, but hey. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.